Hello folks, I am going to be doing a series of PixInsight tutorials that really just are nothing more than how I approach processing pictures that I've taken. And my reason for doing this is that I owe YouTubers like Dylan O'Donnell and Trevor Jones, Sean Nielsen, Adam Block, Warren Keller, gracious, there's so many that I can't keep them all straight or remember them all. Chuck Ayub specifically has been very helpful, but their YouTube channels are certainly worth going to and watching their videos on how they approach astrophotography has been so helpful for me, and I appreciate that. I don't have an original processing step. Everything I'm doing in PixInsight I picked up from somebody. And so what I'm going to go over with you is my approach to processing pictures, having borrowed all of my ideas from these extraordinarily specially gifted guys and gals that have put a lot of effort into their tutorials. They're just not willy-nilly. They come with a lot of thought, and they have all been very, very helpful. So what I realize though is that PixInsight is a very daunting software program, and it kind of reminds me of Photoshop when I first started using it back in the mid-90s. And I am a photographer by profession, so understanding the role of the camera is something that helped me a lot in astrophotography, but that's just part of it, as you well know. PixInsight is a challenge, and so what I wanted to do is just start at the very beginning, show you what I do and why I do it, but as far as explaining how it all is working, I really don't know. I just know that the steps, and most of the time the default settings, work. I've also come to understand that if my pictures do fall flat, it's probably not PixInsight. It's probably something that I did or didn't do. So I have learned, thanks to Adam Block, to really closely examine my data before I ever try to process an image. And when I say examine my data, not just examine the subs, the light frames, but also to examine the flats, the flat darks, the bias frames, and flat frames. And more often than not, if you're having issues with your outcome, it's somewhere in your data. But with that being said, let's open up PixInsight, and I think I already do have it open. And what I want to do is hang on just 1 minute. I'm going to have to take you to the screen, and you probably noticed that I have all of these icons. It's hard not to notice them, and they're called process icons. PixInsight is equipped with processes to help you in your processing of an image, and each one of these has a role that it can play. There is some duplication. For example, there's several different methods of sharpening, of smoothing, of masking, but all of the processes can be found under process. And since I usually do the same thing with every picture, I start pretty much at the same place, and I go through essentially the same processes. I have saved my process icons, and so what I'll do is I'll show you from beginning. I'll close out PixInsight, and then I will open it again. And this is the screen that you would be getting if you were opening Pix. And then I'm going to go to Process, and I'll go down to Process Icons, and I'll load the ones that I have saved. This helps me in a lot of ways. It's more efficient because here's my Process Icons. It's more efficient because I usually start now. I'm using the weighted batch processing script now, but if you're going to manually do your image calibration, calibrating your flats and your bias and your dark frames with your lights, then I would spend my time starting out with these processes. But once I have gone through stacking the image, registering the image, and integrating them, and it's time now to look at the images and start to process them, then I'll use the screen transfer function to run a histogram on a linear look at the pictures that's non-destructive, that let me see what I've got, and obviously I can take a look at issues that I may have with my data. Before I start, one of the things that I'm going to do, and this is part one of PixInsight, is I'm going to go to Processes. I'll just go to All Processes and go down to Blink. And the data that we're going to be working with today, I took with two different telescopes. I used a Vixen ED81S. It's a refractor. It's 81 millimeter. It has a 625 millimeter focal length, so it's classified as wide field. And then I used a StellarView SV70T that with a 0.8 reducer has a 336 millimeter, so it's even more wide field. And because of this wide field look and the ASI camera's pixel size, I am oversampled, and it's not a major oversampling, but it's enough that I have to drizzle my images, and that will also be discussed. If your combination of camera and telescope doesn't oversample, create an oversampling issue where your pixels are actually larger than your stars, and so your stars look kind of like blocks, which are what the pixels look like, and you don't have to drizzle, then those are steps you certainly wouldn't have to take. But when I use that particular setup, the 1600 ASI 1600 MM Pro, along with the StellarView SV70T, then I do have to drizzle, which is another added step that is a little bit time consuming, but it's a must. And so what I'll do is I'll open up my files. Now after I take my lights, let me go to July. Well, we are in July, and this is I took this on July 3rd. I actually took it on July 3rd and July 4th. Let me go to my lights, and now when I'm taking my images, and I'll have a directory called Lights, and in it I will have my HA, O3, and S2 if I'm doing narrowband, and they're all together, but I like to separate them out, and so it's just my preference. It certainly doesn't need to be done. It's an extra step you don't have to take, but I always do it. And so one of the first things I want to do is look through my data and get rid of any pictures that are obviously going to be a struggle for the PixInsight algorithms to fix. Okay, and so I want to, this particular picture has already been stretched, but the rest of them haven't, so I need to click on this, which will stretch all of the images. When that stops, I'm going to zoom up, zoom in on this so that you can see that on these smaller stars that they're real blocky looking, and that's the result of the oversampling. Now, in the name of time, I'm not going to go through all the HA, all the O3, and all the S2 data with this tutorial, but I do want to show you the value of clicking through this to see if you have some errant guiding, crazy looking stars, or now if you've got meteors or satellites or something screaming through your picture, you don't necessarily have to throw those away. There have been some that I have thrown away where an airplane will cross that's so close that it leaves just incredible light streaks and large light streaks. I've had several of those just recently. But I do want to kind of zoom in and show you how blocky these stars are. And that's just a classic case of oversampling, where the pixel size in this wide field with these real small stars is just going to overwhelm them. And so I really don't have sharp stars, and it's hard to process them. So I can already tell some of them are oversaturated, but they are what they are. But I would go through all of these looking for obvious rejects. Now, I already did this earlier, and so I know what I have saved is really what I want. So step number one in part one is to load the blink process and go to your light frames and check your lights out. And then it's a good idea to go to your processes, take your blink, which I shouldn't have gotten rid of, and clear your images and load your flats. And in this case, I had to take a new set of flats, and they're all together. I took L, R, G, B, and S2, O3, and HA. So, but I would pull up my HA flats, and I would do the same thing. I would run the stretch, the non-destructive stretch, just to look at them, and see if there's some crazy unusual vignetting going on. And so again, I would click to stretch them all so that they're all going to be equally viewed, and then I would move through these to see if there's anything unusual or crazy happening. Now this is an HA flat, and it shows the vignetting in the corners. So as you go through these, if you see you have some unusual issues at work, then you can make adjustments or retake flats. With that being the case, I'm going to go ahead and close blink, and I would suggest that before ever starting your process, whether you do it manually or you use the weighted batch processing system, that you consider using the blink tool. Now I will say this, I wish I could take the blink tool and make a process out of it, like one of these, so I don't have to go look for it each time. And as I mentioned, there are two real advantages of these process icons. One, they're handy, they're already here, I don't have to go search for them, and two, they're in the order that I use them. So if I'm likely to forget a process, and I have done that not multiple times, it makes it even less likely that that would happen if I can look here and say, well, now I've got to do a dynamic crop, and do I want to apply a linear fit to these three images? Am I going to use pixel math to combine my narrowband filters, or am I going to do it using the RGB combination or LRGB combination? Then it's the dynamic background extraction. Then I'm going to run multilinear denoise. I don't really spend too much effort or time on background neutralization. I think I heard Warren Keller say at one point in time it's a unnecessary step, but I was doing it before that, and now I don't, and I don't think it's of value, but you might prove me wrong, and I would like to know that. And then I'm likely to do color calibration. Along the lines here is when I start working on the luminance layer, and I do run a deconvolution on the luminance layer. And so all of this is kind of in the order that I use it, and I can sometimes I add a new sequence or a new process icon, and I'll just stick it over here where it's more appropriate, and I'll save it, because you go back up to process icons, save the process icons, and then it just updates and replaces your prior stack of icons. Okay, with that being said, we'll catch you in part 2 when we take a look at the weighted batch processing system. Have a good rest of the evening, and this is the Night Sky Imager asking you, if you are benefiting from this, to click subscribe and like if you do. Offer any suggestions. Guys, I am constantly looking for better ways to do the processing of these images, and I know there's going to be a lot of talent that may stumble on this, and if you have some suggestions, you're not going to hurt my feelings. I'm really interested in knowing the better ways to skin the cat. So have a great evening, and we'll see you in part 2.